You are crouched in tall grass. The wind shifts. Your throwing arm coils back, slow, silent, every tendon in your shoulder pulled tight as a bowstring. 12 meters away, a young horse lifts its head. You release. The deadliest weapon of the Stone Age was never carved from stone. It was built into your body 2 million years before the first sharpened rock. That sounds wrong. The Stone Age is named for stone, for spear points and arrowheads and hand axes and obsidian blades that could split a hair. For nearly 3 million years, your ancestors chipped stone into weapons, and yet none of it, not one fragment in a single museum drawer, was what made them dangerous. Picture the human animal without any of it. No fire, no spear, just a slow, hairless, soft-skinned primate, slower than almost everything that wanted to eat it. By every measure that mattered on the savannah, you were prey. So how did your ancestors stop being prey, climb to the very top of the food chain, and eventually wipe out animals the size of buses? The answer is in your shoulder. In 2013, a Harvard biological anthropologist named Neil Roach published a study in the journal Nature that quietly rewrote the story of human evolution. Roach and his colleagues had a dozen baseball players throw projectiles in a motion capture lab with their shoulders selectively braced, restricting movement to mimic earlier hominid anatomy. The data was clear and a little staggering. 3 small anatomical shifts that appeared in Homo erectus around 2 million years ago. A lowered shoulder, a rotated humerus, a more flexible waist. Together, they let your ancestors store elastic energy in the tendons and ligaments of the shoulder like a coiled spring. When the arm whipped forward, that stored energy released. Speeds reached roughly 145 kilometers per hour. Read that again. A human arm. Faster than a hunting cheetah. No other animal on Earth can do this. Chimpanzees, our closest living cousins, can throw. But with all 4 limbs and full body weight behind it, the best chimpanzee throw caps out around 30 kilometers per hour. A child can outthrow a chimp by the age of 8. Roach calls this the throwing arm, and he argues it didn't just give early humans a useful trick. It opened a door no other species had ever stepped through. The ability to kill at a distance safely without ever having to touch the thing trying to kill you. But the story doesn't end at the shoulder. Here is where it gets strange. For roughly 2 million years after that shoulder evolved, your ancestors threw rocks and sharpened sticks. Effective, but limited. A hand-thrown spear loses energy fast. 20 meters is generous. Then, somewhere in the deep cold of Ice Age Europe, somebody picked up a curved length of antler or wood, notched the end, hooked the butt of a spear into it, and changed the species' relationship with every large animal on Earth. The Atlatl, the spear thrower. The archaeologist John Whitaker, who has spent decades replicating prehistoric weapons in the field, calls it the first true weapon system in human history. The principle is brutally simple. The Atlatl extends the lever of your arm. The same shoulder, the same stored elastic energy, only now amplified. A skilled Atlatl thrower can drive a spear cleanly through a deer at 40 meters. Replicators have punched darts straight through plywood. Some experimental archaeologists have measured Atlatl-driven spears, matching the kinetic energy of a modern .357 Magnum bullet. Now picture that landing in the flank of a mammoth. At French sites like Mars d'Azil, archaeologists have pulled carved Atlatls of mind-bending craftsmanship out of the cave dirt. Antler shafts shaped into leaping horses, mountain goats, birds in flight. The hunters did not just make a weapon, they made it beautiful. They knew exactly what it was. And the timing is no coincidence. The arrival of Atlatl armed Homo sapiens in any new region of the planet, Europe, then Northern Asia, then the Americas, was followed within a few thousand years by the disappearance of nearly every land animal heavier than about 1,000 kilograms. The Australian Megafauna, the North American mammoths, mastodons, ground sloths, glyptodonts, the woolly rhinos of Eurasia. The cause is debated. Climate played a role too, but a quiet weight of evidence is settling on the same direction. Your ancestors, with their throwing shoulders and their notched sticks, were the most efficient large game killers the planet had ever seen. You begin to feel something here, not pride exactly, something cooler, closer to awe with an edge of unease. And the weapon kept evolving. In a sandstone shelter called Sibudu Cave, perched above a river valley in what is now KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, the archaeologist Linwood Lee and her colleague Marlies Lombard spent years sifting through layers of stone tools, nearly 64,000 years old. What they found pushed the bow and arrow tens of thousands of years deeper into the human past than anyone had thought. Tiny stone points, no bigger than a thumbnail. Microscopic impact fractures consistent only with high-velocity flight. Traces of plant-based adhesive, birch tar, or acacia gum still clinging to the bases where the points had been hafted to a slender shaft. A bow stores energy in flexed wood the way your shoulder stores it in tendon. The principles are the same. Your ancestors were inventing weapons modeled on their own anatomy. The shoulder gave them the blueprint, and they were learning to draw it in wood and sinew. Then, because efficiency was never enough, they figured out poison. A team led by the archaeologist Francesco De Rico re-examined a slender wooden stick excavated decades earlier from Border Cave on the border of South Africa and Eswatini, 24,000 years old, sharpened and chemically loaded with ricinoleic acid, the active toxin in castor beans, a poisoned arrow tip, among the oldest ever identified. A single graze meant slow, certain death, a wounded animal that could no longer flee, a hunter who never had to take a single risk. Stop for a moment with that idea. 24,000 years ago, your ancestor was already a chemist. This is the part nobody tells you about the Stone Age. The popular image, the brute with the club, is a fantasy invented by Victorian artists who needed to make you feel evolved. The real picture is colder and more interesting. Your great many thousand times. Grandparents stood at the back of the herd, calm, calculating, with a tool in her hand that no other animal had ever invented, and no animal alive could defend against. She did not need to be strong. She did not need to be fast. She only needed to wait, breathe, and release. What she released was you, because the throwing arm is still in your shoulder. Right now. The lowered humerus, the rotated joint, the flexible waist. Every time you skim a stone across a pond, throw a baseball, hurl a snowball at your brother, you are firing the same anatomical weapon that brought down a mammoth on a frozen plain. The hardware has not been upgraded in 2 million years. It never needed to be. And here is the quieter, stranger truth underneath all of it. The deadliest weapon of the Stone Age was never a single thing. It was always a partnership. An evolved shoulder, a sharpened stick, a human body, and a clever extension of it. The Atlatl, the bow, the poisoned tip. None of them worked without you. And you, biologically, were almost useless without them. The weapon was always the relationship. The tool was an idea, Your body had been waiting 2 million years to think. Which raises a question you might not want to sit with too long. We still have the shoulder. We still have the talent for clever extensions. We still extend our reach further and further from our bodies with weapons our ancestors could not have imagined. The hardware never changed, only the sharpness of what we choose to throw. You are still crouched in the grass. The wind still shifts. Your throwing arm still coils even when you no longer notice it. And the most dangerous animal that ever lived on this planet is still exactly the one reading these words. If the world you came from feels a little closer now, that's exactly the point. Subscribe, and every week we'll uncover another piece of who you used to be.